when God is about to open the door to your breakthrough. When Judy is about to open the door to your breakthrough, there comes a moment in every soul's journey when the weight of waiting feels unbearable, when the night seems darker than ever, and when it appears as if the silence of God has stretched beyond its limits. Yet it is in this very silence, in this very pressure, that the unseen hand of God is preparing to swing wide the door to your breakthrough. Nothing in your life is random. Every delay, every setback, every tear has been the quiet preparation of a greater unveiling. You must understand, before the door opens in the outer world, it is already unlocked within you. The sign that your breakthrough is near is not found in circumstances, but in the stirring of your inner spirit, that quiet conviction that whispers, "It is done." Just as the seed presses through the soil in its appointed season, so too does your life press toward the moment God reveals the open door that was destined for you from the foundation of the world. The door is already open within every great breakthrough in life does not begin when circumstances shift or when opportunities suddenly appear, but rather when the inner door of consciousness swings open and you awaken to the truth that God has already finished the work in spirit before it ever touches the physical world. The tragedy of most lives is that they wait for evidence on the outside before believing that change is possible, but faith is not born in the outer realm. It is birthed in the secret chambers of the heart where imagination and belief become one. When God is about to open the door to your breakthrough, the first sign is not external. It is inward. Something begins to stir within you, a conviction, a quiet sense of inevitability, an inner assurance that though the facts around you scream impossibility, there is a deeper law at work preparing to break through the crust of appearances. This is why you cannot measure your destiny by what you see now. The door is already open within. Your task is not to pry it open with anxiety or fear, but to step into it with faith, to assume that you already stand on the other side. Think of it like a house whose front door has been unlocked while the shades remain drawn. Though you may not see the opening, it exists, waiting for you to approach with confidence. So many delay their own miracles because they are waiting for an outer confirmation before taking the step inward. Yet God has never opened any door on the outside that he has not first opened within the believer. That means your prosperity, your healing, your relationship, your purpose. These are not waiting for some distant future event. They already exist in the eternal now, in the finished work of God, awaiting your recognition. The door is not being prepared, it is already prepared. The moment you feel within yourself that subtle shift from hoping to knowing, from wishing to being, you have stepped into the state that magnetizes the outer experience. You no longer chase, you rest in the awareness that what you seek has already been given, and this inner assurance is not something you strive to create. It is something you awaken to because God has placed the seed of every breakthrough within you before you even asked for it. When you grasp this, you stop begging for doors to open and instead begin living as though they already have. You speak differently, you walk differently, you carry yourself not as one waiting for a miracle, but as one who embodies it. This is the true act of faith, to accept within what is not yet visible without. The walls of your life may still look closed, but in spirit the hinges have already shifted and the opening is already present. This is why the moment before the breakthrough is often the most confusing, because nothing outwardly indicates change, yet inwardly you cannot shake the sense that change is inevitable. That is God confirming that the door is already open within you. The question is, will you step through it by aligning your inner state with that reality, or will you remain outside, doubting the invitation? The open door of God is not accessed through striving, but through surrender, through allowing your heart to rest in the truth that you are already inside. When you live as if it is done, the outer world rearranges itself to match the inner conviction. People, opportunities, resources, everything conspires to make visible the inner decision you have already made. This is why breakthroughs seem sudden to those who watch from the outside, but to the one who walks by faith, they are simply the natural unveiling of what has long been true within. Remember this, every breakthrough is preceded by a shift in consciousness. and the door that God is about to open for you is not a door built by men or dependent on circumstances. It is a door that has always existed in spirit, waiting for you to see it. The moment you recognize that the door is already open within, you cease to be a prisoner of appearances. You stop fearing the delays, the detours, the denials, because you know they are only shadows that cannot cancel what God has already established in eternity. The open door within is permanent, unshakable, and unstoppable, and no force on earth can close what God has opened in your spirit. Your task, therefore, is not to struggle against circumstances, but to dwell in the awareness that your breakthrough is already real. Feel it now, embody it now, live it now, for when you do, you will watch the outer door swing wide as effortlessly as day follows night. Imagination precedes experience. Every visible change in your life begins first in the invisible realm of imagination, for nothing can be born outwardly until it is first conceived inwardly, and when God is about to open the door to your breakthrough, he begins not by altering your circumstances, but by awakening your inner vision. Imagination is not some fleeting daydream or idle fantasy. It is the divine workshop where God allows you to preview the reality that already exists in spirit, and the measure of your willingness to embrace that inner picture determines how quickly it clothes itself in flesh. To the natural mind, imagination seems weak and powerless, yet it is the very womb of creation, for every invention, every discovery, every triumph, every miracle was first seen and felt in the unseen before it was touched in the visible. When you begin to hold an image of your breakthrough with conviction, seeing yourself healed, seeing yourself prospering, seeing yourself restored, seeing yourself standing on the other side of the mountain, this inner picture becomes the seed that must manifest, for what you accept as true within cannot remain hidden forever. The error most people make is to wait until the evidence appears to believe, but that is not faith, that is sight. Faith is the willingness to embrace the unseen as though it were already here, to live from the picture within even when the facts without contradict it. And so, when God is about to open the door to your breakthrough, he often begins by planting within you a vision that seems too good to be true, a stirring of imagination that carries you beyond your current limits, and it is in that sacred moment that you must decide whether to dismiss it as fantasy or to honor it as prophecy, for what you dare to imagine and claim as yours in the silence of your mind becomes the script that your outer life must eventually perform. Consider how often the greatest shifts in your journey began not with an outer event, but with an inner vision, a dream, a conviction, a mental rehearsal of something you had never experienced before, but somehow knew was possible. That was God whispering that the door was already prepared, and your task was simply to walk toward it in the imagination until it became inevitable in the physical. This is why the Scripture teaches that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he, because the heart is not just the organ of feeling, it is the seat of imagination, and whatever you impress upon it with feeling becomes the mold through which life must express itself. When you continually imagine yourself on the wrong side of the door, locked out, forgotten, or defeated, you reinforce that state until it hardens into fact. But when you dare to see yourself inside the promise, already enjoying the answered prayer, already walking in the abundance, already celebrating the healing, you begin to create the atmosphere in which the breakthrough must emerge. The power lies not in trying to force the door open by effort, but in quietly assuming that you are already through it, that what you desire is already yours, and when this assumption becomes natural, the world has no choice but to conform. Many call this living in delusion, but it is not delusion. It is faith, for faith calls the unseen as though it were seen and refuses to be moved by temporary appearances. Imagination precedes experience because life always follows the pattern you set within, and the invisible is always greater than the visible. Think of an architect who holds the complete design of a building before a single brick is laid. The drawing exists first in imagination, and only then is it brought into reality. In the same way, your breakthrough already exists as a completed design in the mind of God, and through imagination He allows you to see glimpses of that finished work so that you might align yourself with it. The reason many give up just before their door opens is because they stop imagining. They allow the outer noise of delay, disappointment, and denial to drown out the inner vision, and by abandoning that picture, they abort the seed before it takes form. But those who cling to imagination, who nourish it with faith, who rehearse it until it feels more real than the circumstances, become unstoppable, for they have already walked through the door within, and life must follow. The world around you is nothing more than a mirror reflecting the world you carry inside. And so if you want to know what door God is about to open for you, look not at circumstances, but at what He is birthing in your imagination. That vision you cannot shake, that picture you keep returning to, that possibility that ignites a fire within you, that is the whisper of God revealing that the breakthrough is near. Imagination is not wishful thinking, it is the signal that a new reality is already unfolding, and your role is simply to embrace it until the outer matches the inner. So, when you find yourself imagining the life you long for, do not dismiss it, honor it. Live from it, speak from it, feel it as though it were true now, for the law of life is simple. Whatever you accept and persist in imagining will, in time, harden into fact. And so, the next time you ask yourself if God is about to open the door to your breakthrough, check not the outer walls but the inner vision, for if you can see it with clarity, if you can imagine it with conviction, then you can be assured the experience is already on its way. Imagination always precedes experience because imagination is the seed and experience is the harvest. Nourish the seed and the harvest cannot fail. Stand firm in the unseen and the seen will bow to it. Trust the vision within and you will soon walk through the open door without. Pressure before promise, the most overlooked yet most certain sign that your breakthrough is near is the rise of pressure, the intensifying of trials, and the weight that seems unbearable just before the release. For in the spiritual order of life, pressure always precedes promise. When God is about to open the door, life often appears to tighten around you. Doors seem to slam shut, obstacles multiply, and the very thing you have believed for seems further away than ever. Yet this is not the evidence of failure. It is the evidence of birth. Just as the darkest hour of night comes just before dawn, so too does your soul experience the heaviest weight just before the new reality emerges. And if you can endure this stage without collapsing into despair, you will discover that the pressure itself was proof of the promise. Pressure is not your enemy, it is the midwife of destiny, for it presses out of you every residue of doubt, every fragment of unbelief, and every trace of weakness that could not walk with you into the next season. The seed must break before the sprout can emerge, the womb must contract before the child is born, and the cocoon must press tightly against the butterfly before wings can unfold, and in the same manner your spirit must feel the intensity of resistance just before it bursts through into freedom. When God is about to open the door, He allows the circumstances around you to grow uncomfortable so that you cannot settle where you are, for without the discomfort, you would mistake delay for destiny and build a life in the waiting room rather than stepping into the promise. Many mistake this season of pressure for abandonment, thinking God has left them or ignored their prayers, but in truth the pressure is His answer, His way of saying, the door is about to open, hold on. The enemy also knows that pressure is the sign of proximity to promise, and so he seeks to amplify the weight, hoping you will surrender before the shift. That is why many give up just before their miracle, quitting the process in the very hour when heaven was ready to release what they asked for. Do not despise the pressure, for it is a divine signpost that you are nearer than you think. When you are pressed on every side, remember that diamonds are formed by pressure, that olive oil flows only when the olive is crushed, and that wine is birthed only when the grape is pressed. The value you are about to carry requires the weight you are feeling now. Pressure is not punishment but preparation. It is heaven's way of stretching your faith so that you can contain the blessing without being destroyed by it. You cannot walk through the open door with a fragile heart or a wavering mind, for the promise requires strength, endurance, and clarity, and it is the furnace of pressure that forges these qualities within you. Instead of running from the heaviness, lean into it, for within the very weight that feels like it will break you lies the force that will propel you into breakthrough. Think of the bow that must be pulled back with tension before it can release the arrow into destiny. Your life is that arrow, and the pressure you feel is only the pull that will release you into divine purpose. This is why Scripture speaks of suffering producing perseverance, perseverance producing character, and character producing hope. For without the press, hope is shallow, but under the weight, hope deepens until it becomes unshakable. When God is about to open the door, he refines you under pressure so that when you enter the new season, you are not merely visiting it but rooted in it. You will not be a guest in your breakthrough but an owner, and ownership requires endurance. The pressure is a sacred signal, though it feels painful, that the time is near. The contractions in a woman's labor grow stronger and closer together just before the child arrives, and so too do the contractions of life. Delays, betrayals, setbacks, frustrations become more intense just before the promise is born. If you can endure the contractions without giving up, the delivery is certain. And so, if you find yourself today surrounded by walls closing in, dreams delayed, prayers seemingly unanswered, and pressure mounting on every side, rejoice, for this is the sign that you are closer than ever to the door opening. The promise has already been decreed. The pressure is only the passageway through which you will enter. Hold firm, refuse to quit, and know that the weight you carry is not in vain. It is the final press before the release. When the door swings open, you will look back and understand that the pressure was not there to break you, but to make you ready, and you will thank God not only for the breakthrough, but for the press that prepared you for it. Alignment unlocks the door. Every door that God opens is not accessed by effort, striving, or manipulation, but by alignment, for breakthrough does not come because you push hard enough or beg long enough. It comes because your inner state comes into harmony with the reality God has already declared for you. Alignment is the key that unlocks what effort could never touch, for it is not the loudness of your prayer but the depth of your belief that shifts heaven into motion. When God is about to open the door to your breakthrough, he does not require your panic, he requires your agreement. Agreement with what? With his word, with his promise, with the finished reality he has already spoken over your life. Many remain outside their door because they attempt to force it open with worry, doubt, and fear. Yet the door responds only to faith, rest, and surrender. Alignment is not passive resignation. It is active faith that lives as though the prayer is already answered, as though the door is already wide open, as though the blessing is already in hand. To align is to accept within yourself the state of the one who already possesses what you seek, and when that inner conviction becomes natural, the outer door must yield to it. Picture a key sliding into a lock. No amount of banging or pounding will open it, but the moment the grooves of the key align with the mechanism, the lock turns effortlessly. In the same way, when your thoughts, feelings, words, and actions align with the reality God has ordained, the door opens without struggle. Alignment means you can no longer entertain the language of lack while asking for abundance. You can no longer live in the state of fear while seeking peace. You can no longer dwell in bitterness while praying for restoration. The door remains shut not because God has denied you, but because your inner vibration is out of harmony with the reality you seek. God does not open the door to desperation. He opens it to faith. He does not unlock the way for striving. He unlocks it for surrender. Surrender is not defeat, it is alignment, for when you release control, you give room for God's power to move freely. When your mind continues to imagine the worst while your lips declare faith, you are divided, and a divided state cannot inherit the promise. But when your imagination, speech, and feeling all flow in one direction, the direction of the answered prayer, you create the inner congruence that forces the outer world to mirror it. This is the secret of alignment. The world without must obey the world within. And so, when God is about to open the door, he first calls you to align. He nudges you to let go of old identities, to release the narratives of defeat, to stop rehearsing the failures of yesterday, for those states cannot pass through the threshold of the new door. You must shed the garment of the beggar to wear the robe of the heir, for the door will not open for the one who identifies with lack. It will open for the one who walks in inheritance. Alignment is costly because it demands that you stop living from the past and begin living from the promise, even while the past still screams for your attention. It requires discipline to turn your focus inward and to remain faithful to the vision within rather than the facts without. Yet this discipline is not heavy, it is freeing, for when you align, you cease the exhausting struggle of trying to make things happen in your own strength, and you discover the effortless flow of grace that carries you into the open door. The moment alignment is achieved, the struggle ends. Doors swing open, opportunities present themselves, people arrive, resources flow. Not because you chased them, but because you aligned with them. Think of a radio dial. The station was always broadcasting, but until you tune into the right frequency, you cannot hear the music. God's promise is always broadcasting, but until you align your inner state to the right frequency, you cannot walk through the door. The frequency of heaven is faith, gratitude, assurance, and rest. The frequency of fear, worry, and doubt cannot pick up the signal. This is why you must examine yourself, not in the mirror of circumstances, but in the mirror of faith. Are your thoughts aligned with the reality you seek, or do you sabotage yourself with inner contradiction? Alignment means catching yourself when your mind wanders into fear and gently bringing it back into faith. It means speaking words of life even when death surrounds you. It means giving thanks for what you cannot yet see as though it were already yours. And as you do this consistently, you begin to live in a state of natural alignment where the door cannot resist opening. God does not delight in withholding, he delights in revealing, but he waits for alignment because to enter prematurely would destroy you. Alignment prepares you to sustain what the breakthrough releases. Without alignment, blessings become burdens, opportunities become traps, and doors become prisons. But with alignment, you walk through with ease, equipped to handle what lies ahead. And so, when you feel the stirring that God is about to open the door, ask yourself, am I aligned with the promise, or am I aligned with the problem? Am I living in the state of one who already possesses the blessing, or am I still living in the state of one who lacks it? For the door responds only to alignment, and the moment your inner grooves match the outer lock, it will swing wide, and you will realize that what you longed for was waiting all along for you to simply come into agreement with it. Alignment unlocks the door because the door was never closed to begin with. It was simply awaiting the moment your state matched its reality. Living as though it is done, the greatest evidence that you are on the edge of your breakthrough is not found in the shifting of circumstances, but in your ability to live as though it is already done, for the open door of God does not respond to begging, pleading, or waiting. It responds to the state of consciousness that boldly declares, "It is finished." Living as though it is done is the highest act of faith because it requires you to walk, speak, and feel from the end even while the beginning still looks empty. It is the refusal to wait for outer confirmation before embodying the inner reality, and it is the quiet assurance that what you hold in spirit will soon harden into fact. When God is about to open the door to your breakthrough, he calls you into this posture of faith where you no longer cry as one in lack, but rejoice as one in possession, where your prayers shift from desperation to thanksgiving, and where your life becomes a living prophecy of the reality you already believe belongs to you. Living as though it is done means you rise each day not asking if it will happen, but declaring within yourself that it has already happened, and you structure your inner world accordingly. Your words change. You stop saying one day and begin to say now. Your feelings shift. You stop entertaining the anxiety of waiting and embrace the peace of receiving. Your actions evolve. You stop hesitating as if you are unsure and begin moving with the boldness of one who knows. To live as though it is done is to step across the threshold of doubt into the room of assurance, and from that place the outer door must swing wide to reflect the inner choice. Many fail to see their breakthrough not because God has withheld it, but because they continue to live in the state of waiting rather than the state of having. Waiting breeds more waiting, but having attracts more having, and the law of life is simple. You reap not what you want, but what you are. If you live as one still hoping, you prolong hope. If you live as one who has, you magnetize possession. This is why thanksgiving is so powerful. It is the language of the one who already has. When you thank God before the evidence appears, you align with the end result, and in that alignment the blessing must unfold. Living as though it is done is not pretending, it is perceiving, for you are not making up a fantasy, you are acknowledging the finished reality that already exists in the unseen. The physical world is slow to catch up, but the spiritual reality is immediate, and when you live from that place, the delay collapses and manifestation accelerates. This is why miracles always seem sudden, because the one who receives them has been living in the state of the answered prayer long before it appeared. To the outsider it looks instant, but to the believer it was inevitable. Living as though it is done requires courage, for you will often look foolish to those who only live by sight. They will see you acting, speaking, and carrying yourself in ways that contradict your visible circumstances, and they will mock or doubt, but this is the price of faith. You must walk in what is unseen until it becomes seen. Noah built the ark before the rain, Abraham called himself father before the child, and David declared victory before the battle, for they understood the principle: you must live in the end before the end can live in you. God calls you to do the same. If you desire healing, live as the healed. Speak health, walk health, breathe health, imagine health, feel health, until your body must conform. If you desire provision, live as the provided for, give thanks for abundance, act with wisdom, carry yourself with dignity, until resources flow to match your state. If you desire restoration, live as the restored, release bitterness, embrace love, expect harmony, until relationships bend to the reality within you. This is not wishful thinking, this is divine law. For life mirrors the inner state without fail. Living as though it is done also frees you from desperation, for desperation is the signal that you do not yet believe. When you know it is finished, you do not beg, you rest, you do not chase, you attract. You do not fear, you trust, and in that rest God's power moves swiftly, for he responds not to panic but to faith. The door you are waiting on will not open while you stand trembling outside, but it will open the moment you walk as if you are already inside. This is the paradox of breakthrough. The door opens not when you knock frantically, but when you act as though you are already through it. Living as though it is done is not arrogance. It is humility, for you are acknowledging that the work was finished by God before you ever asked. You are not forcing something into existence. You are aligning with what has always been yours in the eternal plan. And so the final step before every breakthrough is this posture, this choice to stop asking if and when and to begin declaring now. If you can hold that inner conviction long enough for it to become your natural state, the outer door must give way, and when it does, you will not be surprised, for you will recognize it as the inevitable unfolding of what you have already lived in spirit. The world will call it sudden, you will call it done, and in that moment you will see clearly why God required you to live as though it were finished, because the finished state was the key that opened the door all along.